and he's also chairman of the House Republican Leadership Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Megyn, good to be with you this afternoon.
I want to get your reaction because we had Chris Starwalt, our Fox News digital politics editor, on at the top of the hour, and he explained this convoluted sort of way that the president hopes to pay for his jobs package. I mean, I talk about this stuff every day. I'm barely holding on, so I beg you to keep it simple for me and for my viewers. But it looks like what the president wants, he says, look, it's a $500 million, essentially, jobs package. Right. I know I have to pay for it. This is how I want to pay for it. The super committee that's supposed to be finding $1.2 trillion worth of savings, I'm going to tack it on to them. So they got to find more. They got to find an extra $500 billion. And if they fail to do that, then tax hikes are going to take care of the whole thing. And he wants you in Congress to pass the plan that would make all that happen. Now, he tried to get the tax hikes through a democratically controlled Congress and couldn't do it. Is there any chance of the current Congress doing what the president is now asking?
You know, Megyn, first, it's always good to hear the president out and around. He gives a rousing speech. But legislating is more than just speechifying. And what we've said when the Republicans took over in the House is, first of all, when it comes to these bills, we'd like to actually see them. We'd like to have an open public process so that people in the press and the taxpayers can weigh in on them. We can find out what they really do. Because for 2 years, when they controlled everything around here, we got sold a bill of goods. Remember those 2,000-page bills that rammed through in the dark at night, nobody had ever heard of, nobody had had a chance to read, and they became law, and now we're suffering the consequences. It's hurting our economy. We said we're going to do that differently. So we look forward to working on the president's proposals in the right order. We want to know what they cost, what they do, but it did become more complicated last night when he sent his bills up. And it turns out that they are basically driven in about $400 billion in tax increases. And they're permanent tax increases for short-term spending and borrowing again. And, you know, it didn't work in the first stimulus. But you know what? We're going to take a look at his ideas. We've got some ideas of our own. We got 11 bills we passed in the House that would open up America's energy production and create jobs, that would reduce the costly regulations that are coming out of his very
you got your
agencies.
Own ideas.
They're all over in the Senate. They're in the Senate.
But let me ask you this, because the president is out there saying that we just heard him on the campaign trail. What on earth are we waiting for? We've got broken down schools. We want airports and train stations to be built here that are the best, not in China. Saying we've got construction workers who are ready to get out to work now, and saying you got to get to work right now, that there's an urgency and you share in it.
I do, but you know what? I was a small business owner for 22 years and created jobs in the district I represent, rural Oregon. It is small employers that create the jobs. And sure, we've got roads and bridges that need to be improved. We've got a highway transportation extension bill that will be on the floor of the House soon to extend highway funding on into the end of March. We've got an FAA authorization bill going forward. We've got these energy bills that are already over in the Senate. But what I hear most as I'm out around Oregon and the country from small businesses that want to expand and grow is the uncertainty of these federal regulations are causing them to sit on their money such that they have it because they're afraid of the costs they may incur going forward.
All right, so why don't you deal with that later? Why don't you deal with the regulation in another bill and give the president what he's asking for in terms of infrastructure spending? And he wants, in particular, he wants aid to states so they won't have to lay off teachers and firemen and police fighters, police officers and so on.
We went through this with the first stimulus bill. All of the same things were promised as a result of that stimulus. And as we know, after $900 billion plus interest takes it over $1 trillion, they promised us, the president promised us unemployment wouldn't go above 8%. And we know that didn't happen. It didn't work. So first of all, let's figure out what the costs are. And the president said in 2009, one of the worst things you can do in a recession is to add taxation on the very people that are supposed to produce the jobs. And so here he is coming back saying either this super committee now has to cut another $500 billion or do these tax increases. Those tax increases, as you pointed out, were rejected on small business owners by Democrats. I can't imagine there's the appetite for them in the House right now. There are other things we can do that don't cost you don't have to borrow, that open up America's reserves on energy. It can reduce energy costs and create jobs in that sector. And if we just had a freeze on these regulations for a couple of years, I think you would see businesses do what they do best and a lot better than government, and that is use their money to create long-term private sector jobs.
Well, the president has rolled back some of his regulations. In particular, last week rolled back one on the ozone that was applauded by folks on your side of the aisle. Don't you have to meet him halfway? How can you meet him halfway?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and we're trying to, and that's why we plan to give his proposals a full airing here in the House. You haven't seen us come out and say, oh no, we can't do that or can't do this. What we're saying is first send us the bill, let us get it scored by the Congressional Budget Office so we know what the costs are. Let's look at what these tax increases are and the effects they might have on the economy. Let's hear from those who might be affected by them. And let's just hear how these spending cuts are going to be on top of the $1.5 trillion we've already set for. We can cut more, but the idea was to cut to reduce the debt, not cut to go spend more. That doesn't get your debt down. It just means you're spending more out of the government.
Sir, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your perspective.
Megyn, good to be with you. Thank you.
All the best to you, sir.